Today on MuscleCar, Limelight's big block gets buttoned up. Tommy takes car building to new heights. And Horsepower's Thunderbird has some body alignment issues, but Rick's on the case.
Hey guys, welcome to MuscleCar. Project Limelight here is coming into the final stages of the build. Our goal is to recreate an RSSS 396 using all the options that we would have chosen if we had ordered it way back in 1970.
And when we're all said and done, this baby's not only gonna look factory fresh, but it's gonna drive just like it did back in the day. We started this OEM style build with a nice rust-free split bumper RS. Very little body work was needed before we hosed on the original GM citrus green. A 402 block was built up to the L78 396 specs and bolted up to a Muncie 4-speed.
The front end was upgraded to the F41 special suspension option using all factory spec bushings and parts. And we gave it a 12 bolt since this was the last year you could get one in an F-body. Then we made over the interior to look just like a 1970 Camaro should. Well, the engine's been installed, but it's not ready to fire up yet. We still need to bolt on a bunch of parts, like the carburetor and all the engine accessories. Then we can attend to a few details like the clutch linkage and wiring.
You don't have to remove the hood to do this, but we went ahead and snatched it off to give you guys a better look at what we're doing.
Now, L78 Camaros came with a very specific carburetor. While most F-bodies came with a quadrajet, we need a rare Holly for our application. And these things are not easy to come by. But the parts place specializes in factory correct reproduction carbs, and they hooked us up with this one. Now, this is kind of cool because if someone comes up and they're all like, "Hey man, what pound injectors are you running on your motor?" And you look at them and go, "Dude, I'm running a Holly. Back up." We nabbed our engine accessories from Classic Industries. Now, these are all reman parts made to replicate what would have originally come on an L78 Camaro. And they've got these kind of pieces for a ton of different builds.
The cooling components and wiring are all the same story. All this stuff is built to marry up together right out of the box. Sweet, no modifications necessary.
Need to double check because from the factory they use a resistance wire right here that actually cuts the voltage down to 6 volts instead of 12 so the points last longer. But we put in electronic ignition, so I need to double check and make sure it's not going to screw it up.
All right, now this is why we go back and check stuff. Apparently it's okay to leave the ballast wire in place, but you do need to get your hot off a 12 volt source, not the 6 volt on the other side of the resistor. So that means I need to find myself a new 12 volt switch source. No biggie. With the radiator cover and fan shroud in place, that means we're done shoving big pieces into the engine bay. Time to take off these old pickup truck valve covers and swap them out for the correct chrome ones. I'll bet you thought we were going to leave these orange ones on, huh?
Well, sit down.
The plugs, distributor cap, and ignition wires are also stock OEM parts, right down to the original rubber booties. We're missing a few small things like wire separators and some hoses, but pretty soon, Limelight's going to be ready for the prom. Oh yeah.
Coming up, installing a factory-style big block Camaro exhaust system. And is this a hairball or fiberglass?
Hey guys, welcome back. Got all the brackets mounted for the clutch linkage. I'm ready to drop in the Z-bar. Now all of these OEM style 4-speed conversion parts came from American Powertrain. And once I get all the stuff mounted, we'll get it up here in the rack, make some final adjustments so it engages and disengages in the right spots and doesn't cause any damage. Here's a peek at 1970s technology for you. Back when you didn't need a PhD in astrophysics to properly set up a clutch. Nowadays, when a manufacturer runs a manual transmission, the clutch system is all hydraulic, with a tiny little magical leprechaun who makes it all work. Hey, Tommy B.
Yes, sir.
Want to jump in the car and give me a hand adjusting the clutch?
I reckon. Old thing's pretty comfortable. You know, this thing in like a 4-wheel drive version wouldn't be too bad either. When you're adjusting the play in the clutch, it helps to have somebody that can sit in the driver's seat and run the pedal for you.
All right, Tommy, where are we at on the clutch?
It feels like you got clutch, but it doesn't feel like it gets good till almost at the floor.
Bring it all the way down again one more time.
Getting better.
Keep going. Keep going.
Yeah, it feels about right, Rick.
Cool, we're dialed. We ordered the correct exhaust for a big block from Classic Industries. Now this kit comes with a larger diameter pipe than what our original small block 307 used to breathe through.
These are made from aluminized steel, which would have been the material of choice back in the 1970s. Now it's Rick's turn to be the placeholder guy. He does a pretty good job.
I think it hangs a little low.
It's gonna sound awesome.
It might scrape a little bit.
It's a good thing he's pretty knowledgeable about exhaust. This is what you call a transverse muffler. GM used this design for decades. The pony car sat really low to the ground, so they had to compensate for this by shoving the muffler up between the rear end and the gas tank.
We're reusing the factory hangers, which still fit this exhaust, even though the car came with a single tailpipe.
A little bit of wiggling is all it takes to get the pieces in place. The kit comes with all the OE style clamps to hold everything together. Just don't torque them down super tight until you have everything lined up where it's supposed to be. And voila, a factory correct exhaust system. We've got the exhaust all buttoned up and it's gonna look and sound real nice. The pieces are coming together on Limelight.
Yeah, we're getting dangerously close to taking her out for a maiden voyage, but we still have to hang a gas tank, the brake booster, bolt on a few shiny parts, and tighten up some loose ends.
Straight ahead, Rick shows us how to widen a fiberglass hood and blend to an existing paint job with no color code.
Hey guys, now over the years you've seen us paint a lot of cars in the shop here, and more often than not, we shoot the entire thing. But if you're just replacing one panel, well, you don't necessarily need to shoot the entire car. A perfect example of this, well, Horsepower dropped a big block into this old T-Bird. Now we got a little problem. The hood doesn't fit, so we're gonna do the same thing that any other red-blooded hot rodder would do, a hood swap. Now, just like with all aftermarket parts, we better make sure this thing fits first. All right, first trial fit here and we'll see what we got. We got a little bit of a fitment issue over here on the side. You can tell in the corners there, we don't want to go any further back. So that means this fender right here, it's gonna have to get moved in a little bit. That's off, man. Not to make up that big old gap. The only way to do that is to build up the hood, which means I need to add ½ of an inch to the side of that hood. Dang. I'll start off by opening up the mounting holes in the fender to give me more room to shove it over. The further I can move the fender, the less I have to add to the hood. All right, let's see how much we gained here. We gained some. Now I'm about to start making it rain fiberglass all over the top of the fender and hood, so I'm masking it off to protect them from dust. To give the hood surface good adhesion, I'm using a DA sander to rough it all up. Okay, take a look at this. That wasn't there until I started sanding on it and I took the gel coat off. You park it out in the sunlight, it warms up and that'll actually pop loose and you'll have a hole in your brand new painted hood. So keep a real close eye out for little spots like that. Now since this is a structural part of the hood, I'm using long strand fiberglass filler. It's stronger than the short hair variety and it's close to what the hood is actually made of. Well, it don't look pretty, but Getting there.
When the stuff is starting to harden up, but it's not quite hard yet, be sure to come in here and slice it back loose with a real sharp razor blade. That way you can get the hood back open. If you don't do this, it makes it a real pain in the butt to get it back open, trust me. There we go. All right, let this set up just a little bit longer after making my cut. Now it's time to get rid of this extra stuff here. It's not going to be pretty yet. I'm just trying to get the spacing right.
I'm using a longboard and some 80 grit to take off a little bit at a time. Remember, it's easier to take it off than it is to put it back on. You can already see here where that gap is starting to come into line. Not looking too bad. Next, I'll break the DA back out to smooth off the top and give me a better idea of how the gap is looking. Yeah, that's looking good. Another few swipes with the longboard, and I'm ready to finish work it with some plastic filler. Now the structural work is done. Now it's time for the cosmetic surgery. All right, let's see what we got. There we go. That's looking pretty good. I just got to pull it off and bodywork it. It's getting there.
Still ahead, Rick reveals the mysteries of paint blending. You're watching MuscleCar. For a DVD copy of this episode, just go to PowerBlockTV.com and order your copy for just $5.95 plus shipping and handling. Start your own MuscleCar collection, delivered right to your door from the Power Block.
Well, we got the hood fit on the T-Bird. It's actually looking pretty good. I ended up adding about 3/8 of an inch to this lip over here, but the gaps, they're pretty tight. Well, now we're ready to get the rest of this thing smoothed out. As usual, I'll start off by knocking down the shine with the DA and some 80 grit. Now, since this is all cosmetic repair, I can go straight to the plastic filler. I'll hit it with some guide coat to show me the low spots. Roll out the longboard and get it flat and ready for primer. I'm using an epoxy primer because it's highly compatible with the makeup of the hood. With the primer drying on the hood in the booth, now's a good time to get these fenders prepped out. I'm going to be shooting the hood on the car. That way I can blend the color from the hood onto the fenders. And that means I got to sand them out with some 1000 grit. You may be wondering why I'm only sanding down to the body line right here. There's a good reason for that. There's a lot better chance of having a good color match from the fender to the door if I keep my clear above this point. Now you may be thinking, well, clear is clear, why would it change the color? Think of it as taking like an old rock and dip it halfway in a glass of water. It's going to change the color on half of that rock. It's the same thing on a car. If you take a part of a car, dip it into clear, it's going to change the color, even if it's just a little bit. Now I'm completely masking the engine compartment because I don't want any overspray getting on horsepower's shiny new motor. A final rub down with some 400 grit and water, and the hood's ready to go into place. I'm covering up the top of the fender to keep the first coat of new color off of them. I'll explain why in a minute. Now that old bird's been painted once before and not in the original color. Now if you don't have the code for the color you're trying to match, well, there's a few ways you can do it. You can get a color chip book, find a color as close as you can find, and then tint it from there until you got a match. Or you can do like I did. Call up Auto Body Color and Supply, send them a part of the car, and they'll do the match for you. We're ready to rock. With metallic paint like this, you have to watch your overlap really close so you don't get tiger stripes. Now I'm going to take the new color from the hood, blend it onto just the top of the fender, but preserve the original color over here on the side. Then re-clear the whole top of the fender. By the time it's done, you'll never even tell. And make sure you aim your gun so that the overspray is blown away from the car and doesn't go all the way down to your mask line. Now last on is the clear. I put 2 coats on the hood and 1 on the fender. This time, you can spray all the way down to the tape line. That about wraps up Horsepower's new T-Bird hood. I hope you guys have a little bit better understanding of how involved a project like this can be, and why you probably shouldn't be so surprised when a body shop hands you an estimate for $1,200 to basically do the same thing. Now, if you have any questions about anything you saw on the show today, you can check it all out at powerblocktv.com. Well, I still got to get this thing back down to horsepower, but for this week we're out of time. So until next time, we're out of here.